Welcome. Welcome to Mixtapes and Mopeds, the Red Wheels Panda podcast. Hey, big shout out to our listener, or two listeners, Jack and Stone. Thank you guys. But Panda, this week I found out we got quite a few more. I happened to hit back into the hometown this last weekend and walked into our watering hole, Sweeney's. And a big shout out to the Sweeney's crew. We've got Dale, Floyd, John, and Scott all listening into. We have a lot of listeners every week.
That's awesome.
We
It's
must be
growing.
up to a whopping 10, you know? Holy crap.
That
I don't
that
know.
is the best book club in Central Ohio too. They got going there, Sweeney's. So
We
that's
gotta we
always
gotta
good.
expand the book club. So I think
Yes.
this week we're expanding the book club and we're expanding it south. We're going south. We're going to be looking to go south to Cincinnati because we are the fastest growing podcast on the planet. So with that,
Nobody can prove that wrong, right, Steve?
nobody can prove that wrong. We have a great show coming up this week, and we have a special guest, Mr. Panda. I'll let you talk
Yeah.
about special guest and introduction.
Yeah. So this is our very first special guest host. So we had one uh, where we brought somebody on to tell a story, but this is we're bringing Jim on, good friend Jim, to be our guest host. So this is our trial run. And Jim's got a really interesting story that we're going to get to in a couple of segments. But so welcome, Jim. No pressure being the first, right? No
No
pressure.
pressure, Jim.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Steve. Andy,
Welcome to
it's
the show.
great to be part of the podcast. I am from Cincinnati, Ohio. Grew up in Dayton, Ohio, so I'm an Ohio native. Spent a few years in North Carolina, where I'm a teacher. I teach math. Right now, I'm teaching at Moeller High School in Cincinnati. Um, I've taught
Molding the
elsewhere in
minds of our
Cincinnati.
kids. What do you teach? What's the
I
subject?
teach statistics. I teach AP
Ooh,
statistics. I've also got a sports analytics course that we teach at Moeller. So it's something I've always been interested in since I was a kid. Playing dice baseball and Stratomatic and all that good stuff. So it's great to actually be able to teach that to kids and get paid for it.
oh, I have
Although
to.
not much,
When
but
we
but we
get to
do
that
get paid.
section, we have got. By the way, we have a great show coming up. When we get to that, I've got to ask you about some of those students coming out of there.
Hold on a second. So before we move forward, something really important. So Jim, I don't know how many of our episodes you have listened to in the past, but I don't know, but maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago, we did our best pizza places all over the world, really. And it was the Dirty Niner pizza, best pizza. Well, when we were back, Jill and I went up to Ohio to visit Casey. We did dinner with Jim and his wife up at a new place, pizza place, never been. And Jim said he's from Dayton. So apparently, this is the go to pizza place in Dayton. It's called Marion's Pizza.
Been there.
And
That's a good pizza.
oh my,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
there you
that's a
oh,
go.
good pizza.
All right.
Yeah.
oh, that is Dirty Niner worthy for
Mm,
sure. So we're Donato's kind of trained in Central Ohio, but the Marions, they're even cut into smaller little pieces. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And for some reason, it just tastes better that way. I don't really understand it,
Yeah.
but what a great place. So if we ever revisit the pizza topic, Marion's is going to have to get some strong
I
consideration.
forgot about that. That is a strong consideration. Good
Yeah.
call.
Now, Steve, when you were there, did you pay cash?
That's all you can pay.
Well, they've
I
changed now, so they
oh
will take
oh.
credit cards. But yeah, for years, since I was a kid, it was cash only. A lot of
I took
stories behind that too.
Mine
But
was a customer dinner. I had 15 people coming in because they said, "Hey, where's the best place to go?" I had to scramble. I was in there and they said that cash. I told all my guys, "Go, all right, I gotta go. I'm gonna disappear." I went down to the
yeah,
ATM because I had it close, but I had to go run and get a couple $100 more just
yeah,
in case.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
that's
I
good.
forgot about that. Yep, that yes. That
Yeah,
was a little surprising. And I think I even had a couple $100 in my pocket, but 15 people
yeah,
may not cover that. Yeah, that's fun. But now they take credit cards?
they do. Yeah,
Finally. All
they,
right.
they've expanded. There's one in the Cincinnati area now, um, but it's still a Dayton thing. It was since I was a kid.
When I went up there, we got 4 drinks, 4 beers or whatever, and went up, and the guy said $13, and I'm like, is that for one? Like I've never 4 beers, $13 at a restaurant.
Yeah.
I would be there all the time. Crazy.
Yeah.
College beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, college
And
beer
no, and
prices.
no tipping either. You're not allowed to tip there. They don't take tips.
Oh,
Wow, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
love
Panda,
that
what
place.
happened? What happened here this last week with you?
Yeah, all right. So last week mentioned that the Stones were in town Friday, and this is my third show, but Jill's first show. And I am telling you, these guys, they're in their 80s now, and you've got Mick Jagger, just he probably walked 25,000 steps in that 2 hours. He never stops. They were amazing. It's the set list is just hit after hit. You got Keith Richards, who looks like he should have been dead like 20 years ago, still banging away at the guitars. They were amazing. And after the show, Jill was like starstruck. She couldn't believe like how good they were. And I have to admit, like being the third time, it was freaking amazing. I unreal. I took some video. I actually posted a video to our Facebook page and actually got a lot of traffic. A lot of folks that are looking at that video. It was "Gimme Shelter" and the female singer, backup singer they have on that song. If you know the song, is a very strong female part. And anyway, she just destroyed it. She was amazing. So she and Mick Jagger like walking around the stage, like singing back at each other. It's like
She
and
wasn't
you
wheeling around in the wheelchair or anything like that.
none of that.
With the IV keeping him going, nothing like
Not
that. Okay.
Mick could out walk or run all of us. He would run circles around us. That guy is in phenomenal shape. But yeah, it was a great show. And just even the Mercedes is a big place. There's probably 50, 60,000 people there, but it sounded great. Just an
He was
outstanding
he was
show.
Mick Jagger always in usually when he's going to a city, he will pop up in the city. He was spotted in Five Points, walking
Oh
around
yeah.
Five Points
Yeah.
before the show, either Friday or Saturday. And anyway, I was out of town. I would have
One of
loved
the
it. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
One of the funny things, like, he's like, who's here from Alabama? And then a bunch of people scream, who's from Chattanooga, or who's from South Carolina, who's ITP, who's OTP? I mean, like
So he knew
somebody's
it.
somebody's
Yeah.
feeding this stuff to him, I'm sure, but he just connects with the audience. Everybody got a kick out of that. So yeah, just a great show. I would, I mean, as good a shape as they're in and as great as they sound, they're coming to an end. So if they're coming to a city near you, I would highly recommend figuring a way out to go watch those guys one last time. So great show.
Jim, have you ever seen the
I
Stones?
I love the Stones, but I've never seen them live. No.
Yeah, I'm in the
No.
same boat. Love them, and I've never seen them live.
Yeah,
I
for a while, I'd go between the Beatles and the Stones, and the Beatles and the Stones, and they would always say that the Beatles are from the neck up and the Stones are from the waist down. And as I got older, I started to appreciate the Stones, because they just, I wouldn't call it improvisational, but it's a freer,
Yeah.
just pounding it out kind of thing, and
Yeah.
they've got such a variety
That's it.
of abilities. It's incredible when you go through their catalog. They've played. Oh gosh, Faraway Eye, Girl with the Faraway Eyes.
Oh, I
Some
love
of the
that
best country
song.
western song I've ever
Yes.
heard.
Yes.
They've
It
got their
is.
disco and they've got their early rock and this later stuff.
And the blues. I mean,
cover
And the
everything.
blues.
yes, the
They are
Yeah.
based on the blues. They are just so good. Yeah, they
Yeah.
can
That's
do
why
it
they're
all.
different than the Beatles. I always think the Beatles sound crisp and clear,
Yeah.
but the
Mhm.
Stones know how to do so many different genres.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think they're two totally different bands.
Yeah.
But that's a hard pick for which one do you like
Yeah,
better?
it kind of depends on the mood you're in, and what you want to hear.
Exactly.
'Cause They're two different sounds. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Steve-O, how was your trip up north to Columbus?
I got to tell you, one of the precious things to ever do in life, even if you're not a golfer or you don't ever get around something like that, is we had the opportunity. I was up there to take my father out for his 80th birthday to the Memorial Golf Tournament in Muirfield, Jack's place. and got to take him into the Muirfield with my brother and my son, and we got to have a boys' day, the Wheeler Boys' Day at Muirfield Golf Course. And I got to say, just when you walk out there, I've been to probably, I don't know, 8 different tournaments across the country. I've never played golf, and I will probably never be able to play golf in any of these places. But it's just such a special feeling. I was lucky enough. I researched ahead of time where's the best place to go see the tournament without having the big crowds, and I plunked my dad down on a hole 11, 12, 13 so he could see 3 holes at the same time. But we were lucky enough. Stone and I figured out that the players hit right here on the 11th, and we could be right next to the players. So I literally had Rory McIlroy. Well, actually, he lost his ball, and Stone found it. Um, it was in. He hit it in the deep rough over our heads, and all the tournament officials were scattering, looking around for the ball, and Stone kind of knew where it was at. And so, one of those times when you see the whole fan base get around the ball. And that son of a gun took that thing when we're 2 feet from him, and he's got to hit it over 3 trees out of the rough. He put it 4 feet from the pin and birdied the hole. And you look and go, I'll never in my life, ever, 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 never. Victor Hovland, he hit it right next to the marker with the fans. And he's, hey guys, I got to take this out. Can you help me out and take out the other pin? He just, they were so nice. And then Ricky Fowler was probably the best. So Ricky was not having such a good day. He was 10 over on the front nine. And there was some guy standing right next to us, and he had this 87 marker on his hat. And what it meant was he was 87 yards from where the hole was marked. And that way, the golfers, if anybody comes by there, knew exactly how far they had to go. They didn't have to look in their books. And Ricky turned around to this guy and goes, "Where the heck were you in the front nine, man? I could have used you all day long because I was stinking it up." And he was chucking along. And I mean, he just walked up and smacked the ball because he was all done for the day. He had had enough, but he was very personable. And, all those guys were just personable out there on the course. It was a lot of fun. And then Scotty Scheffler, good God. That guy just walks up, puts it on the grid. He's amazing out there watching. Anyway, what a special time for anybody ever get a chance. It actually was relatively, wasn't terribly expensive to get to see that tournament. It was, you could even park for free. You can get in there under $70 a ticket. It wasn't that bad to get into the tournament. Always recommend those kind of things. All right. Well, Jim, we might as well ask the guest host. Did you do anything this weekend? Anything fun you had this last week? Come on.
Anything fun? No, I've been working on a deck in the back of our house. I've pulled the old one down and then putting up new deck boards and screwing them in. And it's amazing how no 2 deck boards are the same size. They're just bent and
ever.
So I had my daughter out there today with a crowbar trying to straighten them out so I can screw them down just before they fling back. But yeah, my wife's been out of town. She's actually in Ireland this week and
golfing out on the tournament.
Yeah. So that's been my project, and I think it's finished. I think today was it. I think I got everything in, so it's time to move on. Yeah, we're headed out to Emerald Isle next week for vacation, so I wanted to get this in before we left town.
Nice.
As I said, I've been teaching part-time this week as well, so it's been a full week. But nothing fun though, like the Stones or the Memorial, unfortunately.
I will tell you a really quick funny story. I had a guy help me out with the deck for like 8 weeks, and he was a rather bigger guy, and so I had a tool belt. And every week he came, I used to unlet the tool belt a little bit more, and he was out there working over the weekend, and he's like, "Steve, I'm losing a ton of weight working on your deck. I got to keep coming back every week." So every week I'd let it out a little bit more and he'd come back. And then we were finishing up the deck, and I took the tool belt and I tightened it way up. And he came in for the last week and he goes, "What the heck happened?" I go, "Man, you must have had a bad weekend. You were out drinking too much or something crazy." I go, "I got another project coming up though. I think we can help out and work on that." I finally told him that story, and I got called several bad names.
That's funny.
That rolls us right into the Dirty Niner the Dirty Niner this week. Our next segment here, we are going to be going the Dirty Niner with the best college basketball teams of all time. Guest hosts, Jim, kick it off with the best number one college basketball team of all time.
All right. Well, I've given this a lot of thought, and I don't know if I mentioned this in my introduction, but I coached high school ball for 10 years in Ohio and North Carolina. And so I got to watch, especially while I was in North Carolina. I mean, it was a dream come true. I lived down there. I was single, lived in an apartment above a garage, and I would go to Duke to watch them practice. I'd go to NC State. I'd go to Wake Forest. I'd go to Chapel Hill. The only caveat was if I was at Duke, I could not tell them that I was going to be going to North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And the same thing, if I was at Chapel Hill, I couldn't tell anyone that, oh, after this, I'm going to Duke, because they wouldn't allow that. But that was a dream come true for a coach. So obviously the Duke teams, I think there are two that come to mind. The 01 team that had Battier and Boozer and Jay Williams. And then, of course, the Leitner Hurley group from, what year would that have been? 92, I guess. And Grant Hill. I mean, those three guys. You know, those are easy picks. And, of course, you got, you know, you the traditional picks. But I wanted to think back to teams that I just watched that I thought, wow, like just for a burst, these guys are really good. And one of those teams that I thought of was one of the UNLV teams. Larry Johnson and Stacey Augmon. They played Duke in the finals, I think it was 1990, and beat them by 30 points. And they may have lost a few games that year, but there were stretches when they played as well as anybody. And I think Jerry Tarkanian was a highly underrated coach because he got those guys to play just a suffocating defense.
Mhm.
And as
sucking on a towel the entire game.
Yeah. And as athletic as they were, they bought into his system, and they were scary. I mean, just watching them, I'm like, whoa, you know, these guys. And then, so, you know,
who's your number one? Who's your number one? Who's number one? Which one is your number one?
All right. I would say number one, based on the talent on that team, would be the 1983 Houston Cougars.
Oh.
Again,
I slam a jam.
NFL teams, they were loaded, and they had spurts where they played better basketball than anyone I had seen. So those would be my top two, kind of coming.
Whoa. Which one? We got to pick one. You got more picks coming up. Number one. Give it.
Okay. Well, I got to go with UNLV and Larry Johnson, Stacey Augmon. That'll be my number one.
Okay, there we go. That's a great choice. Those teams where you just sat there and you're like, the other team doesn't have a chance because you said, they suffocated you defensively, but they were still great offensive players. It wasn't like they only defense; they could do both, and they were out in transition, and you know they were out like Phi Slamma Jamma. They were out on transition, dunking on you before you even know what happened too. But UNLV was kind of the same way. So yeah, great choice.
Number one, UNLV. Panda. Let's go on to number two in the Dirty Niner.
I do not like making this pick, but of the teams that I recall, this team was as close to just a lock W as any team that I recall in all of my life. And I was a young pup, but I still remembered it. You had Bobby Knight as head coach. They had Quinn Buckner, Mike Woodson, all these guys. None of them, they had lots of NBA players in there, but they were like no Hall of Famers. But they were such a team. They just played so well together. They went 32-0, and it's the 1976 Indiana Hoosiers. Yeah. They were just invincible as far as I'm concerned. So they got to be on my list.
Man, we were 11 years old back then.
Yeah, we were young pups.
Young pups. I mean, I remember that. That was just Bobby Knight at his best before he started throwing chairs and everything else.
Yeah,
Bobby Knight and his tough coaching at the best. Good pick, number two. So number one, we have UNLV. Number two, we have the Bobby Knight Hoosiers. Boy, you guys are making it tough on me. I'm not going for a single team. I'm going for an era.
Oh
And
no, come
I am going to
on,
go
nah,
for two eras. And it
no.
Well,
is with
I'd have
it's
gone
with
for if that's it. I would have gone for a color. I would have
it's
chosen
for
blue.
Lou Alcindor and the Bill Walton era.
Yeah.
He had two eras. I mean, 11 championships and whatever years John Wooden was coaching, and he kind of formed basketball. Everybody kind of copied what he was doing. You can even say football teams. You could talk football teams. Everybody copied John Wooden and his style of coaching. But there were two different versions of 3 to 4 years of pure dominance of constantly winning, and you got to go with UCLA. I
There was
mean,
one common thread amongst all those teams at UCLA. They were always the best team the money could buy when they
Yeah,
played.
I was gonna mention I was gonna mention Sam Gilbert, who I don't know if you guys are
Yes.
familiar with that name, but
Yeah.
and Wooden will claim plausible deniability. He said, "Well, I don't know anything about that," but yeah, there's been a lot come out about just how they came up with those rosters. But
probably every single team we're talking about today had a bag of cash drop in
yeah,
their lap
yeah,
somewhere, sometime.
well, real interesting on the 1973 team. This was Walton's.
Had to
I
be a
think this
senior
is
year
his.
because that's when it
Yeah.
ended, right?
Okay. They played the University of Dayton Flyers, and I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. I was a huge UD fan as a kid, and they played the Flyers in New Mexico in the regional finals, and Dayton took them to 3 overtimes. The
Oh,
game was out west. It was so late, nobody I nobody heard. Of course, I had my little radio under the pillow that night. It was a school night, and it was just devastating because the Flyers almost knocked off. Piddly little Dayton
oh
Flyers
man, that's an
almost
awesome
knocked off
story.
that
Yes.
UCLA team that went on to
Oh,
win the national championship. So I could never root for UCLA after that. I just it broke my heart as a
Yeah.
12-year-old, 13-year-old, and that still haven't gotten over that.
Who was the coach of that Dayton team? Was that Donaher or was that
That was
before?
Don Donaher. Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Right.
And he had it, man. He had,
Mm.
yeah. It still hurts. But
Yeah.
you need to move on.
Yeah.
number 4, Jim. Who's your number 4 team? College
Um,
basketball.
Again, I'm kind of looking at that intimidation factor and a team that just would mow over opponents when they were playing their best, and that would have been one of George or John Thompson's Georgetown teams. I think his
Oh
'85
wow.
team when he had Patrick Ewing and Reggie Williams and those guys. Again, when they were playing their best,
Yeah.
they were unbeatable, and they were so intimidating. A lot like the Houston and UNLV teams. It was like men among against boys, and yeah, they didn't win all their games. They lost to Carolina in the finals back in '83, at '84.
But golly, they
Uh,
were just
they were
dominant.
they were good, and they were
Just
well
dominant.
coached as well. Very
Yeah.
well coached team.
Yeah.
John Thompson was awesome. I loved watching those guys. You never felt anything that they were just. There was not the bad boys. It was just dominant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
They
good
didn't,
era.
they didn't
Love
back
those
down
guys.
from anybody, those guys.
No.
No.
Except, and then they lost to Villanova. They
Yeah.
should have beat Villanova by
Oh,
30,
yeah.
and they did. I mean, to Villanova's credit, the
Yeah.
Wildcats did what they needed to do to win that game. But that was Georgetown's year, and
Yeah.
then they just ran into the right team at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Number 5, Panda.
All right. I'm going out of the box just because I love this movie. So I know a little bit about him, but I'm going to 1966 Texas Western,
Yeah.
28-1, Don Haskins.
On Haskins. Yeah.
Think about this. Think about this. Don Haskins is hired. He was like a women's basketball coach, and he was hired to run a really crappy program down in El Paso, Texas Western, which is now UT El Paso. And he had like nobody, he had a handful of guys, but they weren't any good. And he goes out and recruits. Yeah, he would have probably done well in today's environment because he went out and got like 5 guys and then goes 28-1 and wins the Natty and takes down Adolph Rupp,
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah.
And totally changed the game of basketball. That you can look at various events in the course of a game, a sport, and that win over UK was a
What did he do?
moment.
Slow it down?
No, he started all black players for the first time ever in the championship game and didn't play a single one of his white players. He played
Fantastic.
all black. And just making a point, like, that he needed to get the rest of the country kind of on board. And it was, socially it was a big deal, but for the sport of basketball, it changed it forever. And anyway, great movie, Glory Road. If you haven't seen
Yeah.
it, I would highly recommend that movie. But I think the team is very deserving of its place on our list, so I'm going to put it on there for number 5.
Good.
That's a good one. Man, that's hard to follow that. That is a really good pick. We've talked about some of these teams. I'm struggling. I'm going to go to a place that I shouldn't go to, but I love this team and I didn't like the school. Matter of fact, just not a fan of the school, but I'm going to go to the team anyway because we had fun watching them. We saw them in Rupp Arena in Kentucky.
No.
I am going to
No.
Fab Five in their freshman year. They didn't win the championship. I'm not a fan of the team, but I have to give they did not win the Big
Tainted our
Ten.
list.
They never won the Big Ten. They never won a national championship, but that team was just so good. And I enjoyed that team. I loved
good. So
I loved the
agree to
story. I loved everything about it. Hats Mr. Marcus, fair. I'm gonna give you a little ado on the Michigan fans. We have to talk about once in a while, give them a little bit of credit, even though we may not like them. But that one was a really good team, and I'm going to give them my number 6 pick. As everybody goes, boo, boo! You've really gone down on this one.
Steve, you like the teams that are paid for, so that's good. You're consistent.
Yeah.
Well, we've always talked about the bag of cash, except for your last pick. Jim, final pick, number 7. Who's your pick?
You got to go with the Tar Heels with Worthy and Jordan and Perkins. I mean, you 3 legitimate NBA guys on the same
best
team.
Of the best. Yep.
Yeah. They beat Georgetown in the finals that year. Again, Dean Smith coaching the guys. I think Matt Doherty was on that team. I mean, they were loaded. So I think can't remember the year off the top of my head, but that team with Jordan.
81, 82. Yeah, 81, 82. They were awesome. That really changed NBA and everything after that. Just boom.
Yeah.
If you watch the movie Air, which is about Nike and Jordan and all of that, they actually talk about that game against Georgetown. You have James Worthy, who's the future number 1 pick in the draft, like months later, and they need a basket to take the lead. And they use him as a decoy to get the ball to the freshman Jordan, who takes the 18-footer and drains it. And the point of the movie is that just tells you the greatness that Dean Smith had already seen in Jordan. But that was a crazy talented team, and obviously a very good choice. But also another good movie to go watch. I like that movie Air.
Number 8 in the Dirty Niner, Mr. Panda.
Since you polluted our list with that team from up north, I'm tempted to put the 1960 Buckeyes in there, but honestly, I never saw them. Obviously, they played before. They had
you met one of their guards, right?
They had Bobby Knight, and they had Havlicek and Lucas and Noel. They had all these Hall of Famers.
Did you know the head coach was asking Jack Nicholas to be a walk-on on that team?
Yeah, Nicholas wanted to be a basketball player at Ohio State. Yeah.
Yep.
And then he saw all the talent that was coming in there. He's like, no, I think I'll go play golf. It's probably a good move on his part. But so I mentioned Ohio State because I think they're worthy of the discussion. This one's a little bit of a stretch. I get it. But I was at this national championship game here in Atlanta in 2007. and the Florida Gators from 2007.
Oh,
That team was
Yeah.
so good, and they beat the Buckeyes. They had
Yeah.
Greg Oden, who was a phenom, Mike Conley, and
who's still playing?
yeah, still playing. I mean, they had, that team was loaded, and they handled them by 10 points. But that Florida team, again, they didn't have. I mean, I guess they still got the guys at Boston, that
Horford.
still play, Horford,
Yeah.
but all the other guys, they all played in the NBA to some degree. But Billy Donovan, who I'm not my favorite coach in the world, but he had those guys playing such connected basketball that they were very impressive. And since I got to see it in person, it really left its mark. So I'm going to include them on the list at number 8.
And I think they had a 2-year run, didn't they?
Yeah, they won back to
Yeah,
back. That was their
Yeah.
second
Yeah.
year.
back to back against us. Florida beat Ohio State in the national championship in football.
Yeah,
They
Yeah.
beat us
yeah,
in the national
Yeah.
championship in basketball. So
yeah.
we were not fans of the Florida team. All right. So I'm always out there in left field trying to find something new. And I'm going to go through, I think Jim had talked about earlier of there were 3 teams, but I am going to go outside of men's basketball. I'm giving kudos to women's basketball. And there's 3 teams. I mean, UConn, Tennessee, and now University of South Carolina. I'm giving the final one, the number 9 is the 2023-2024 Dawn Staley, University of South Carolina Gamecocks. I have a daughter that goes there. That team was 39-0. Got to give them credit. Tennessee's, I mean, you could say a lot about during the year of Tennessee, the year of University of Connecticut, but this team is another dominant team. So I stepped outside of the rules again and
You're
came
such a
up
rule. You are such a rule breaker.
my whole life, right? I can say all my life, rule breaker.
Well, obviously are setting the standard these days. It'd be hard if I'm going to go for a women's team. It'd be hard to go up against Gino's run. That guy, and of course Pat
Yep,
Summit. Pat Summit
Gino and
before
Pat
him,
Summit,
but
both those two, they're better runs. I mean, legitimately, this year they beat Iowa with what's her face? I mean, what did I
yeah,
say?
her.
Does anybody even know her? The one that didn't make the Olympic team this year? Poor girl.
Caitlin Clark.
Yeah,
Yes.
Caitlin Clark.
It's funny because Caitlin Clark, I don't think I ever saw a WNBA highlight in my life, and now I probably see one every day on my TikTok
Yeah.
feed or
Yeah.
whatever. She's
Yeah.
raised the interest level. I'm not saying she's the best player. She's not the best player in the WNBA, but she's entertaining to watch. She's got a
Man,
lot
that
of
pull-up shot she has from a 35-foot angle, you can look and go, God bless.
yeah.
She's just so impressive to watch. I love watching it. I
Yeah.
haven't watched her. I got to say, I haven't seen the WNBA, but I watched her so much in college basketball. I had to go. I was going to say Iowa, but I could not. Had to go for the Gamecocks. Say that was a great team, especially because they beat them. That wraps up the Dirty Niner. We're now going to dive into a really interesting topic. Analytics, you could say, some people go, oh my God, sleep mode is now on. Bull crap. Analytics is driving every sport today. You can look at it college football, basketball, baseball, everything drives analytics. So Jim is going to be starting up. Andy, go ahead and do the introduction for this next segment.
Yeah, I was just when we were up at Marion's actually enjoying our pizza pie. I'm a big Bengals fan. I lived in Cincinnati when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, and long suffering fan. And Kenny Anderson was the quarterback from my youth, and I remember the days where like Mean Joe Green or Jack Lambert would pick that guy up on his head and drop him straight on his head. I mean, he just got abused by the Steelers, but those great Steelers teams. But he was this Mr. Consistent quarterback. He always led the league and completion percentage before that was even a thing. Now everybody can do like 65%, but he was very accurate before it was really a thing. And he's never gotten the due consideration because we did lose the Super Bowl the year he went and didn't really get that. You really need to have a Super Bowl to really be a quarterback Hall of Fame candidate, and didn't quite get that. And so we were just talking about it, and Jim's like, "Hey, I got, here's what I'm doing. I'm not going to spoil it for him, but," and I'm like, "This is a perfect topic for our podcast because it really aligns with, when we grew up." And so I thought it was an interesting topic. So Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you describe what you and your students are doing and attempting to do for Mr. Anderson.
Sure. As I'd mentioned before, I teach statistics at Moeller High School here in Cincinnati, and came up with the idea a couple of years ago of teaching some sports analytics, and the idea was to teach just regular statistics, but give it a sports theme. Because I mean, statistics are statistics, and standard deviations and means and ranges and all that. Whether you're doing sports or economics, business, medicine, it's all the same. So we just decided, well, let's just paint it with sports and get some interest. And we did. So we've got a class now that we offer. We have 2 sections of the class. And the second part of the quarter, we undertook a project where we decided to collect data and see if we could make a case for someone, and being from Cincinnati, and like Andy, I grew up a Bengal fan, and I would, as a little guy, I would go to Wilmington College and watch the Bengals training camp, and there's this Ken Anderson guy, who at the time was a rookie, and he was just like, oh my God, this guy. And then he was good. I mean, he was really good and consistent year after year after year. So, it always kind of bothered me that he never got his just due, and he never got considered for the Hall of Fame. So I mentioned it to my guys, showed them a little tape. I worked through Lance McAllister, who's with 700, which is WLW, which is a sports radio station in Cincinnati. He was able to provide me with some interviews of some ex-players that I shared with my guys, Dan Fouts being one of them, who is in the Hall of Fame, saying, Kenny was better than I was. We need this guy in there. So I got the interest up with my guys, and so we spent a few weeks just gathering data. And what we ended up doing was looking at a list of 12 quarterbacks who played since 1973 who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'll run through this list real quick for you. Steve Young, Kurt Warner, Joe Montana, Dan Marino, John Elway, Troy Aikman, Bob Greasy, Warren Moon, Dan Fouts, Ken Stabler, Jim Plunkett, and Terry Bradshaw. And so it's okay. Well, Ken Anderson should be on this list. So let's draw some numbers. And at first we just looked at quarterback ratings, but realized that it was a different game in the 1970s as it is today, obviously. And to compare a guy like Kurt Warner with Bob Greasy would be silly because Kurt Warner threw the ball 40 times a game and Greasy might have thrown it 12.
Larry Zonka was his guy.
Right, he was handing the ball off. I mean, and Greasy was a great quarterback, but he didn't have the numbers, obviously. So we decided what we do is look at each of these guys and identify their best 5 seasons, and then not compare the guys with each other. So we're not going to compare Kurt Warner with Bob Greasy, but instead we're going to see how Kurt Warner did against his peers in each of those 5 years. Was he clearly the best of his peers within his 5-year window? Mm-hmm. And so we did that for the 12 quarterbacks, and then Anderson made number 13. And as we looked at these, we saw that Anderson was far and away better. And I don't want to bore you with all the numbers here, but we did what are called Z-scores, which basically measures how far above or below you are from the average. So we took Anderson's numbers, for example, in each of his best 5 seasons to see how much better he was
from his peers
than the average of the top quarterbacks of that season. And his 5-year total was 6.63 standard deviations above average. Now, Steve Young was 9.22. He was by far the highest. But Anderson was number 2 at 6.63. You've got Stabler at 2.07, Warren Moon at 2. Jim Plunkett was less than 1 standard deviation above the average quarterback during each of his best 5 years. So even though Anderson didn't win a Super Bowl, he was in a Super Bowl and he didn't win it. I mean, his numbers dictate that he's certainly deserving of at least some consideration. And if you go back to that Super Bowl, he set some Super Bowl records. He
He
set a
did?
record for completion percentage
Yeah.
that stood for like 25 years. If you remember that game, there were two plays in particular. One of them, his fullback ran the wrong route and was tackled. Charles Alexander was tackled at the 1 yard line on a fourth down where he should have gotten in the end zone and scored the first touchdown of the game, which could have changed everything. Later in the second half, his rookie wide receiver dropped a 30-yard, 35-yard pass inside the 10-yard line that could have put the Bengals up late. So, Anderson did what he could. He had a great game.
That was
And-
Collinsworth, wasn't
yes,
it?
it was. Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Collinsworth dropped the ball. No
He did.
kidding.
He
Rookie,
did. And he'll, in fact, he's one of the interviews we had, and he'll admit it. He's like, I could have cost him the Hall of Fame. If he'd have won that game, or if the Bengals had won that game, I think it's a slam dunk.
What a good statement from Collinsworth, by the way. Just saying that because this means he's a great dude. Right?
Oh,
Just
yeah, he's phenomenal.
to go and say, if I could have done something.
Oh,
better.
and you could tell it still pains him today that as great as he was, and he got Anderson a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns, but
he's one of my favorite announcers of all time. He ranks right up there at the top. Collinsworth is just a great yes.
So we made the case, and actually there's a guy by the name of Jim Foster here in Cincinnati who's kind of a conduit between Cincinnati Bengal fans, sports writers, some Hall of Fame voters. So I presented this to him. He's all in. And so there's actually in July, it's pretty cool. I don't have the date in front of me, but they have every year, I guess, a kind of a Bengal day downtown where they invite like the Bengal Ring of Honor, their Hall of Famers there, and some of the top Bengal players. And Anderson's going to be there, and they're going to kind of, share this with everyone there, and hopefully try to get the attention of the Hall of Fame, because based on our numbers, it's a slam dunk. And I spoke with Ken Anderson on a couple different occasions about this because number one, I wanted to get his permission. I said, hey, we're doing this. How are you? And he was great with it. But he's so humble that it hurts him, not that he didn't get in so much as he just doesn't like the attention.
The notoriety.
Right. But I think given the fact that, these are high school guys and, we're learning some things as we go, he was like, yeah, you've got my blessing, let me know how it goes. And so we shared that with him, and we're just hoping that maybe it'll lead somewhere here soon. Because I think these next couple of years are pretty important when it comes to where he is with his career and the possibility of getting into the Hall of Fame. So I think this year or next may do it for him.
Even if you're not a Bengal fan, I've got little chills in my that I'm just. I was a Steeler fan, but I just get little goosebumps.
Well, and Andy brought
what
up
you're doing
earlier, and this is another thing, and we looked at all kinds of things, but one of the things we looked at were the defenses they played against. Ken Anderson had to play against the Pittsburgh Steelers twice a year, and this is a steel curtain. I mean, this is arguably the best defense,
the best of the best
in the history of the NFL, and he had to go against those guys twice a year. He had a winning record against those teams. But another interesting thing we looked at was Hall of Fame teammates. Okay, and we've got like Terry Bradshaw. You should know these guys: Franco Harris, Lynn Swann, Mel Blount, Joe Green, John Stallworth, Donnie Shell, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, Ken Stabler, George Blandon, Jim Otto, Willie Brown, Gene Upshaw, Fred Melitnikoff, Art Shell, Ted Hendricks, Dave Casper, Ray Guy, Cliff Branch, Ken Anderson, Ken Riley, Anthony Munoz. That was it. He didn't have these. Cowboys, Dolphins, Raiders dynasties. He had to win without that kind of talent, and he did win in arguably the best division in football for several years, because not only were the Steelers good,
the Browns,
or the old Houston Oilers. So it wasn't an easy road, and I think
was that Earl Campbell days? Was that when Earl Campbell was around?
Yeah, Earl Campbell. That's right. Dan Pastorini, and they had some really good teams. Yeah. So it was great. It's always nice when you hope you're going to find something and you do. So that was kind of rewarding. The ultimate reward would be if you can get into the hall. And I told my guys, and a lot of them are seniors, so they're out of school now. But I told them I'd track them down if this happens. Because not that you
do a ceremony,
but you
bring
might
everybody together.
Little part in it, yeah.
Absolutely.
So it was a fun undertaking, and I don't know what our project will be next year, but something.
Oh, I've got one for you, by the way. I'm waiting on.
That's okay.
I'm not telling you today. What a great story!
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I'm a numbers guy. Steve's number. We're all three actually data guys, and you can manipulate stats, but not this way. The way you
Right.
approached it, it's just so it is what it is.
Right.
And he's number 2 on the list of 13 quarterbacks, 12 of which have made the Hall, and he is 2 on that list, and the only one didn't make it in. So, well done to you and your students. I sure hope that I'm pretty sure this podcast is going to put it over the top with the voting committee there for
That's
the.
why I'm here. That's why I
Okay.
Hey, Sweeney's residents, please get out there and start helping the vote.
Here's a question for either one of you guys. What college did Ken Anderson go to?
Augustana.
Very good. Yeah.
Yes.
I would think he's the only NFL player from Augustana.
I would think so. Yes.
I don't know of anyone since him anyway.
No, I'm not aware.
That's a fascinating story about Bill Walsh. And another thing too is Anderson played for 3 very unique offensive coordinators. He started out with Bill Walsh, and then Bill Walsh left, and then he was with Homer Rice for a couple of years, and they were terrible.
Yeah.
And then he was with Lindy Infante when Forrest Gregg took over. So he relearned a system and then relearn 2 more systems on top of that. But the interesting story, Bill Walsh, and Bob Trumpy will say this, who was his tight end back in the 70s and 80s, is Walsh saw him in some kind of a college camp and came back to Cincinnati and told the staff, I found my quarterback. And he brought him in to work him before the draft, and he wouldn't even throw a ball. He would just work on his drop, like his drop and his footwork. And he's like, this guy's perfect. You know, he had the lower body of an offensive lineman. He had a cannon for an arm. And once he started throwing the ball, he was like, this is perfect. And, you know, coming from Augustana, you know, Anderson, you know, he was talented, but, you know, he didn't have any real bad habits. And so it was almost like a blank slate. A lot like Tim Duncan was when he came to Wake Forest. You know, hardly played basketball, so they were able to teach him everything. And Bill Walsh took the same approach. He basically built him up from the ground, from the footwork through the arm strength and the accuracy.
That's a movie. That's a movie.
Yeah, it
really.
really.
If anything, Jim, if you didn't get the Hall of Fame, you've created a movie. That would be a great. That would be a great movie.
If Bill Walsh would have stayed with Cincinnati instead of leaving, you know, what could he have done with Ken Anderson? Because, you know, Joe Montana was great, but he didn't have the skill set that Anderson had. You know, Anderson had a better arm. You know, he was more mobile. You know, he was a bigger, stronger guy. You know, who knows? But I think the fact that he had some time with Bill Walsh really helped with his development early on.
Great story.
What a great segment. What a great story. Jim, thank you very much. That analytics and collecting all that, just what a great story.
Thank you. Well, it was fun. It was a blast. You know, it's kind of sad to see it ended, but at the same time, it's nice to kind of push it off and share it. And hopefully, as I said, it'll go somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Our next and last segment coming up. Growing up, what did you collect? Except for Jim is not allowed talking about statistics.
Oh, I got a good one.
Data.
Your Jim.
Panda, go ahead and kick it off.
Oh, darn.
Do you want me to kick it off? I can give it.
There was it was from back in Dayton, Ohio, and I'm sure no matter where you grew up, there were only, like in Dayton, there was Budweiser, there was Miller, there was Stroh's. And then we had some Cincinnati beers. There was Wiedemann, and there was Shaneling and
Little Kings. Come on, Little Kings, baby.
Yeah, Shaneling.
7-ounce Little Kings.
So, you know, as I don't know, probably 10, 11, 12 years old, all the guys just started collecting beer cans. So you go out in the woods and you find these old rusty cans and you try to clean them up, or you dive in the dumpsters and you try to pull these things out, and you build a wall in your basement of all these old rusty beer cans. And I don't know what they were worth. I do know that in my many travels from Ohio to North Carolina back to Ohio, I'm carrying these garbage bags full of stinking beer cans until I meet my wife.
Helped out in the dating world too, didn't it?
Getting into our house, and she's like, seriously? And so they ended up in a dumpster somewhere.
Yeah.
But as a kid, it was finding those old beer cans, cleaning them up, and setting them up on the wall in the basement.
the pull tab. The pull
Yeah.
tab is
Yeah.
no longer around. The
Yep.
pull tab.
Yep. Yeah. Well, the key is like I would try to get my dad to buy one, and then we'd open it from the bottom so you'd keep the top intact.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother and I collected beer cans. We would go every year on a 2-week trip out west to Colorado and Wyoming and Montana and all those
Oh, so
places.
you had the cores. You were the ones with the cores.
Yeah. So we were always looking for Coors block letter. It was a special
yeah.
older version.
Yeah.
And it was really expensive. And we would go by the side of the road into garbage cans. And my parents were like, "What are you doing? You're bringing these filthy cans with us on our motorhome and sticking the place up." And we had boxes and boxes of things that finally, they all got tossed eventually.
Well, Steve, Iron City had these Steeler cans. You remember those? And they had
oh yeah, my dad threw them all out. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I love those.
Sweet.
I had Steeler, Iron City. Oh yeah,
yeah. Yep.
Big collection of that stuff. Did anybody have the beer can tree? I asked for Christmas the beer can tree where you'd like have this tree where you'd set them up in the tree. That all went with the garage sale one day when I was at college.
We would stack them in the basement at the bottom of the steps, and we'd have probably 200 cans stacked up, maybe 20 rows of 10 or 10 rows of 20 maybe at the bottom of the steps. And every once in a while we had a little beagle hound, and every once in a while she'd come tearing down the steps and clip the corner of the table. And so I'm up there doing homework or watching Gilligan's Island, and all of a sudden you just hear this crash, and there's 200 beer cans just go crashing all over the floor, and then we'd have to just reorganize them and put them in a different order somehow. But that was a thing there for a while. Yeah,
that's a good one. I won't. I'll go next, and I won't do that one since we've covered it. But my dad had this oak barrel. It was maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 feet tall and maybe 18 inches around. And in that barrel, he had all of these coins. And so my brother and I would take the top off and just pour these out on the floor. And they were like 1910, 1880 pennies and dimes and silver dollars and all of that. And so my dad really he was always like, every time he found a coin, because back when we grew up, coins were a thing. That's how you paid. But he would see a 1964 dime that was all silver, and he would just drop it into his barrel. And over the years, it just got huge. So that was his. But I had those blue booklets that had the slots for every year for like the pennies, the dimes, and the nickels. Yep. And I still have those 3 booklets to this day. Fortunately, because they're very easy to not throw away. They're very small, and you could easily transport them, and they don't smell like beer. But I spent a lot of time getting my penny collection up, and I think I had from like 1912 up through the 80s or whatever. And so that was probably the main one I did. My brother and we also collected cards, but for me it was more about the chewing gum than the cards. We had boxes of baseball cards and whatnot, but for me it was mostly I enjoyed the actual money, the coins. So that was probably my big one.
Panda, I'm right there with you. Same deal. Had just boatloads, and I went through so many packets of pennies and looking through pennies from the bank, and I had a paper route, so when collecting in the paper route, I had to be at the bank all the time, so I got so much coin having a paper route. I used to get all that crap, and you're always looking for silver wheat pennies and throw them in there. And so my parents did the beer cans. I had like 4 collections. The beer cans never made it through college. My dad got rid of that in a yard sale. Trains, I had a big train collection with this big board, huge board. I came back one Christmas, gone. Baseball cards. I mean, I had some great baseball cards. I mean, like I had the Willie Stargell rookie card. I had the Roberto Clemente rookie card, gone.
Oh no!
Oh yeah, he sold it for like $20, and now that card alone is probably worth $500. But anyway, it went through at a yard sale. But I still have my coins. They didn't throw away. They didn't throw the money.
Did you guys ever get the big NBA basketball cards? The big tall cards? Okay.
No, you mean
those? And those are pretty valuable now. I've got a handful of them left.
Huh.
They were taller. You know, it Topps made them,
Huh.
and we had Al Cinder and Chamberlain and Oscar Robertson and those guys.
Wow.
But we had a few, mostly baseball cards, but we did have a few basketball cards.
I remember my mom actually collected cards, and so we somehow inherited them, and I don't even know where they are now. I think they might be in a box, but she had like a Frank Robinson card, and she had a Billy Martin card when he was a player from
Oh,
like the
wow.
40s. So I got to figure out where the hell those are because I
I had a
haven't seen them in years.
Book Pal card. I always loved my
Oh,
Boog Pal.
Boog Powell. Very good. I like that. Boog.
Great podcast this week, everybody.
Yep.
Please, we want your feedback. We are the biggest, fastest growing podcast in the world right now. Please tune in. We want to thank our very special guest. You know what? What an awesome show, Jim. Thank you so much.
That was the blast, guys. I love it. Man. It was like sitting with two friends. It's been great.
Jim, we're going to have you back on a future broadcast. I think you've got some stories, maybe back from your basketball coaching days. Maybe we can
I want to hear about some of those.
Sure.
I definitely want to hear about some of those. We have a great podcast coming up. We've got another guest host that it's going to be super secret coming up. Closing out today, we always have our last closing comment. Mr. Panda, kick us off.
All right, from our favorite comedian from the 80s, Mr. Stephen Wright. Here we go. Hard work pays off in the future. Laziness pays off now.
Such a true statement. Ask any basketball coach like Jim.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Great episode. Thanks, guys. See ya.